Sometimes the cruelest prison isn't built with bars and chains, but with empty chairs and turned backs. And sometimes the person they work hardest to erase is the one destined to rewrite everything they know. The silence at the Omega table was different tonight. Vera Ashcote had grown accustomed to silence over her 23 years in the Thornridge Pack, the kind that came from being systematically ignored, deliberately overlooked, purposefully forgotten. But tonight's silence carried a sharp edge of anticipation, like the air before lightning strikes. The great hall of Thornridge buzzed with excitement. Every unmated wolf in the territory had been summoned for the spring gathering, that ancient tradition where alliances were formed, mates were found, and the social order was reinforced through careful pageantry. Long tables stretched across the stone floor, arranged by designation. Alphas at the front, bathed in firelight and glory. Betas in the middle, respectable and proud. Deltas and gammas further back, still visible, still valued. And then, tucked against the far wall near the kitchen entrance where the draft was coldest and the light was dimmest, sat the Omega table, or rather, the Omega chair. Singular. Because Vera was the only one sitting there. It hadn't always been this way. Once there had been 5 Omegas in Thornridge, but one by one they'd been traded to other packs, married off, or sent away to better opportunities. Everyone knew the truth. Alpha Calder Thornridge had been systematically removing Omegas from his pack, considering them a weakness he could no longer afford. Everyone except Vera had been deemed worth trading. She was the exception, the one too flawed to even give away. Look at her, sitting there like she belongs. A voice carried from the beta tables. Vera didn't need to look to know it was Senna Blackwater, daughter of the pack's second. Senna had made tormenting Vera into an art form over the years. I heard Alpha Calder tried to send her to the Riverside pack last year. Another voice joined in, Dax, Senna's brother. But they sent her back. Said they didn't need charity cases. Laughter rippled across several tables. Vera kept her eyes fixed on her plate, barely touched despite the feast laid out before the pack. Her stomach had learned not to expect much. Omegas ate last, and by the time the platters reached her corner, there was rarely anything left but scraps. She probably thinks someone's going to ask her to dance, Senna continued, loud enough for half the hall to hear. Should we tell her? Or let her keep hoping? More laughter. Vera's fingers tightened around her fork, but she didn't react. Reacting only made it worse. She'd learned that lesson when she was 15 and had dared to cry publicly after being excluded from the summer hunt. The mockery had lasted for months. Enough. The word came from the head table, but it wasn't Alpha Calder. It was his son, Orin, the pack's heir. He stood with his wine glass raised, commanding attention effortlessly. Let's not waste our energy on irrelevant matters. Tonight, we celebrate. Tomorrow, we prepare for the arrival of King Aldrich Nightvane himself. The great hall erupted in excited murmurs. Vera's head snapped up despite herself. King Aldrich Nightvane. The Alpha King who had united the 7 territories 5 years ago. He was a legend, ruthless in battle, brilliant in strategy, and according to rumors, still unmated despite being courted by every Alpha family in the realm. And he was coming here, to Thornridge. Vera's wolf stirred for the first time in weeks, a flutter of something that felt dangerously close to hope. The morning of King Aldrich's arrival, Vera was scrubbing the great hall floors when the orders came down. All unmated wolves are to present themselves at the northern gates at midday, Beta Garrick announced, his voice echoing off the stone walls. Full ceremonial dress. The king will inspect the pack upon arrival. Vera's hands stilled on the brush. She looked up from where she knelt in soapy water, her simple work dress already soaked through. Does that include? She started to ask. No. Garrick didn't even look at her. Alpha Calder has made arrangements for you to remain in the kitchens during the king's visit. We can't have you embarrassing the pack in front of royalty. The words shouldn't have stung anymore. They shouldn't have. But somehow, they always found fresh places to cut. By noon, Vera watched from the kitchen window as the entire pack assembled in their finest clothes. The females wore gowns in Thornridge's colors, deep burgundy and silver. The males stood in ceremonial leathers, their pack marks displayed proudly on their arms. Even the Omegas from visiting packs had been allowed to stand in the back rows. Everyone except her. "Stop gawking and start on those dishes," Marna, the head cook, barked. But there was something almost pitying in the elderly woman's eyes. "Royal visits mean royal appetites. We'll be cooking for 3 days straight." Vera turned from the window and plunged her hands into scalding water, but she couldn't stop her wolf from whining in her chest. It was a pathetic sound, the cry of an animal that had been kicked too many times but still couldn't help hoping for kindness. The trumpet blast announcing the king's arrival made her jump, sending soapsuds flying. Through the window, she watched the massive iron gate swing open. The king's convoy entered like a storm made flesh, 50 wolves in formation, their movements precise and deadly. Werewolves, every one of them. Vera had never seen anything like it. And then he appeared. King Aldrich Nightvane rode a black horse that seemed too large to be real, but it was the man himself who stole her breath. He was younger than the stories suggested, perhaps 30 at most, with dark auburn hair that caught the sunlight like polished copper. Even from a distance, she could see the way power rolled off him in waves, making every wolf in the courtyard instinctively lower their heads. Every wolf except one. Vera stood frozen at the window, her wet hands gripping the stone sill, and for one impossible moment, the king's head turned. His eyes, she couldn't see their color from this distance, but she felt the weight of his gaze, swept across the courtyard and landed directly on the kitchen window. On her. Her wolf surged forward with such violence that Vera gasped, stumbling backward. Pain lanced through her chest, her spine, every nerve ending suddenly alive with electricity she'd never felt before. "Girl!" Marna caught her before she fell. "What's wrong with you?" I can't." Vera couldn't form words. Her wolf was screaming something, a word, a truth, a claim that couldn't possibly be real. Mine. No. No. That was impossible. Fated mates were rare, and they certainly didn't happen between kings and unwanted omegas. Her wolf was delusional, broken like the rest of her. But even as she tried to deny it, even as Marna forced her into a chair and pressed a cool cloth to her forehead, Vera couldn't shake the feeling that everything had just changed. Because across the courtyard, King Aldrich Nightvane had stopped listening to Alpha Calder's welcoming speech. He was staring at the kitchen window with an expression that looked almost like recognition. And then, to the shock of everyone present, he spoke just 3 words that carried across the silent courtyard. "Who is she?" Alpha Calder's face went through several shades of purple before settling on a sickly gray. "Your Majesty?" he stammered, following the king's gaze to the kitchen wing. "I'm afraid I don't understand." "The female. In the window." King Aldrich's voice was quiet, but it cut through the courtyard like a blade. "Who is she? And why is she not with the rest of your pack?" Vera's heart hammered so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. Marna had gone perfectly still beside her, her weathered hand still clutching the damp cloth. "Move away from the window," the cook whispered urgently. "Girl, move now before—" But it was too late. The king had already dismounted, his movements fluid and predatory as he crossed the courtyard. The crowd of wolves parted before him like water, everyone shrinking back from the sheer force of his presence. "She's nobody, Your Majesty." Orin stepped forward, his diplomatic smile firmly in place. "Just an Omega who helps in the kitchens. We didn't want to waste your time with—" "I asked your Alpha, not his pup." The king's eyes flashed dangerously. And I certainly didn't ask for your opinion on what wastes my time. Oren's smile cracked. He stepped back quickly, properly chastened. Alpha Calder cleared his throat. Her name is Vera Ashcote, Your Majesty. She's, well, she's our pack's remaining Omega. Her wolf is weak, barely present. We've kept her on out of charity, but we thought it best not to include her in the formal presentation. We didn't want to give offense. Offense. King Aldrich repeated the word slowly, as if tasting something bitter. You thought hiding a member of your pack from your king would give less offense than presenting her honestly? No, Your Majesty. I only meant, bring her out. Now. The command cracked through the air like a whip. Vera felt rather than heard Marna push her toward the door. Her legs moved on their own, carrying her through the kitchen and into the harsh sunlight of the courtyard. The moment she stepped outside, every eye turned to her. Vera was acutely aware of how she must look. Her work dress stained and soaked, her dark hair escaping its braid in wild curls, her hands still red and raw from scrubbing. She was everything Thornridge was ashamed of, put on display before the most powerful wolf in the realm. She kept her eyes down as she approached, following protocol. An Omega never met an Alpha's eyes directly, and this was the Alpha of all Alphas. Closer. King Aldrich's voice was softer now, but no less commanding. Vera took 3 more steps and stopped, still staring at the ground. She could see his boots. Fine black leather, probably worth more than everything she owned. Look at me. It wasn't a request. Slowly, fighting every instinct that screamed at her to stay submissive and small, Vera raised her head. The world tilted. King Aldrich Nightvane had eyes the color of molten amber, flecked with gold that seemed to catch and hold the sunlight. They were beautiful and terrible, and utterly focused on her face with an intensity that made her knees weak. And in those eyes she saw the same shock, the same recognition, the same impossible truth that her wolf had been screaming since the moment he arrived. Mate. Impossible, he breathed, but he was already moving closer, his hand reaching out as if drawn by invisible strings. Your Majesty. Alpha Calder's voice pitched high with panic. Please, she's not suitable for... Be silent. The king didn't even glance at him. His hand hovered near Vera's face, not quite touching. May I? He was asking permission. The Alpha King was asking her, an Omega, for permission. Vera managed a tiny nod. His fingers brushed her cheek, and the bond snapped into place with such force that she cried out. It wasn't pain. It was everything. Every wall she'd built to protect herself from feeling too much shattered in an instant. She could feel him. His shock, his wonder, his absolute certainty, and underneath it all, a loneliness so deep it matched her own. King Aldrich caught her as her knees buckled, his arms strong and steady around her. I've got you, he murmured, and then, louder, addressing the stunned crowd. This female is my fated mate. Anyone who has mistreated her will answer to me personally. The silence that followed was absolute. Then Senna's voice, shrill with disbelief. That's impossible. She can't be. She's defective. King Aldrich's head turned slowly toward the beta table, and the look in his eyes made several wolves whimper. Say that word again, he invited quietly. Please, I'm very interested to hear what you think of my mate. Senna went white and silent. The private chamber Alpha Calder offered King Aldrich was the finest in Thornridge, a suite normally reserved for visiting dignitaries, with windows overlooking the eastern forests and furniture carved from ancient oak. Vera had cleaned this room 100 times but never imagined she'd enter it as a guest. She definitely never imagined she'd enter it as the king's acknowledged mate. Sit, Aldrich said gently, gesturing to a chair upholstered in burgundy velvet. When she hesitated, he added, Please, we need to talk, and you look like you're about to collapse. Vera perched on the edge of the chair, her hands twisted in her lap. Her mind was still reeling, trying to process what had happened in the courtyard. The bond hummed between them now, impossible to ignore, a golden thread connecting her chest to his, pulsing with warmth and certainty. Aldrich pulled another chair close and sat facing her, his elbows on his knees. Up close, she could see the fine scars that traced across his knuckles, the calluses of a warrior who'd earned his crown through combat, not inheritance. "Tell me about your wolf," he said without preamble. "They said it was weak. Is that true?" Vera's throat tightened. "I. My wolf barely surfaces. When I try to shift, it's like something blocks me. I can feel her there, but she's distant. Muted." She forced herself to meet his eyes. "The pack healers said I'm defective, that my wolf is malformed." Something dark flashed across Aldrich's face. "And you believed them?" "Why wouldn't I? I've tried to shift properly since I was 16. It never works. I'm 23 now, and nothing's changed." "Everything's changed." He leaned forward. "Do you know what I felt when I saw you in that window?" She shook her head. "My wolf went absolutely feral. Not aggressive. Desperate. Like he'd been searching for something his entire life and finally found it." Aldrich's voice dropped. "I've had the best trackers in the 7 territories looking for my fated mate for 5 years. Do you know where they searched?" "No. Everywhere. Every major pack. Every minor territory. Every gathering and ceremony." His amber eyes held hers. "But I never thought to look in the kitchens. Never thought to search among the wolves that packs hide away in shame." The words hit her like a physical blow. "You think they hid me on purpose?" "I think someone made sure you'd never be found." He stood and began pacing, his energy barely contained. "Tell me about your parents." "I never knew my father. My mother died when I was 8. A hunting accident, they said." "They said?" Aldrich repeated. "What was your mother's name?" "Lysa Ashcote. She was an Omega 2. Quiet. Kept to herself mostly." Vera frowned, trying to remember. "But I have this memory, probably not even real, of her telling me I was special. That one day I'd understand why things were difficult." "What else do you remember?" "Nothing really. After she died, Alpha Calder took me in but assigned me to the kitchens. Said it was charity." The pieces were starting to shift in her mind, forming a pattern she'd never seen before. "Why are you asking me this?" Aldrich stopped pacing and crouched in front of her chair, bringing himself to eye level. "Because fated mates don't just happen randomly. The moon goddess pairs wolves for a reason, usually because together, they're meant to accomplish something significant." He paused. "And in my experience, when someone tries very hard to hide an Omega and convince her she's worthless, it's because they're afraid of what she might become." "That's ridiculous. I'm nobody." "You're mated to the Alpha King. That automatically makes you somebody." His hand found hers, and the bond flared warmly. "But I think it's more than that. I think your wolf isn't weak at all. I think it's been suppressed." "Suppressed? How?" "There are herbs, potions, old magic that some packs still know. If administered consistently from a young age, they can inhibit a wolf's ability to fully manifest." His jaw clenched. "It's illegal in my territories, punishable by death. But not all packs follow my laws." Vera's mind raced back through memories. The special tea Marna always insisted she drink every morning, claiming it was for her health. The bitter supplements the pack healer provided monthly, saying they'd help strengthen her weak wolf. The specific meals prepared separately from the rest of the pack's food. "Oh, goddess," she whispered, "they've been poisoning me." "Not poisoning, suppressing." Aldrich's grip on her hand tightened. "But if I'm right, and you stop taking whatever they've been giving you, your wolf should begin to emerge properly." "Why would they do this? I'm just an Omega." "That's what we're going to find out." He stood, pulling her up with him. But first, we're getting you out of this pack. Tonight. What? I can't just leave. You're my mate. You can do anything you want. His smile was fierce. And what I want is to get you somewhere safe where we can figure out who you really are and why someone worked so hard to keep you small. A knock at the door interrupted them. Aldrich's expression shifted instantly from gentle to dangerous. Enter. Alpha Calder stepped in, accompanied by Beta Garrick. The Alpha's diplomatic smile was strained. Your Majesty, I hope the accommodations are sufficient? They're adequate, Aldrich replied coolly. I've decided to depart at dawn. Vera will be coming with me. Of course, Your Majesty, though perhaps we should discuss the proper protocols for transferring an Omega between packs. She's my fated mate. There are no protocols needed beyond my claim, which I've already made publicly. Aldrich's voice carried an edge of steel. Unless you're suggesting the mate bond isn't sufficient authority? No, of course not, Your Majesty. Calder's smile faltered. I only thought, given her weak condition, that perhaps a period of adjustment. Her weak condition will be addressed in my territory by healers I trust. Aldrich moved to stand beside Vera, a clear statement of protection. Tell me, Alpha Calder, what medications has your pack been giving her? The question landed like a stone in still water. Calder's eyes flickered. Just standard supplements for Omegas with developmental issues. I want a complete list. Every herb, every tonic, every supplement. On my desk before dinner. When Calder hesitated, Aldrich's voice dropped dangerously low. That's not a request. After they left, Vera turned to Aldrich. You think he knows about whatever was done to me? I think he either knows or suspected. Aldrich's expression was grim. And tomorrow, we're going to find out exactly what they've been hiding. Dinner that night was the most uncomfortable meal Vera had ever endured, and given her history of eating alone in corners, that was saying something. She sat at the head table, right beside King Aldrich, in front of the entire pack. The Great Hall had never been so quiet during a feast. Usually, dinners were raucous affairs with laughter and conversation flowing as freely as the wine. Tonight, you could hear every clink of silverware, every nervous swallow, every whispered speculation. You don't have to do this, Vera murmured, acutely aware of every eye on them. I could eat in the kitchens like usual. No. Aldrich's hand found hers under the table, warm and steady. You could never eat in the kitchens like usual again. Those days are over. He'd insisted she wear one of the ceremonial gowns kept for visiting dignitaries, a deep sapphire silk that actually fit her properly, unlike the cast-off work dresses she usually wore. Marna had helped her bathe and braid her hair, the elderly cook's hands gentle but her eyes sad. You're leaving us, Marna had said quietly. It wasn't a question. I have to. I know, girl, and I'm glad. You deserve better than what this pack gave you. She'd pressed something into Vera's palm, a small carved wolf, worn smooth from years of handling. Your mother left this for you. I was supposed to give it to you when you turned 18, but... She'd trailed off, shame coloring her voice. I was afraid of what Alpha Calder would do if he knew I kept something of hers. Now, that small wolf figurine rested in Vera's pocket, a reminder that at least one person had cared enough to defy orders for her. Your Majesty, Orin spoke from further down the table, his tone carefully respectful. My father mentioned you were interested in our Omega management practices. I'd be happy to provide documentation of our methods. I'm interested in why those methods were applied to my mate specifically, Aldrich interrupted, his voice pleasant but his eyes hard. You see, I've had some very interesting conversations with my royal healer this afternoon. Would you like to know what he told me? The table had gone even quieter, if that was possible. He told me, Aldrich continued, setting down his wineglass with deliberate care. That the herbs in the supplements your pack has been providing are a very specific combination: wolfsbane, moonflower, and shadowroot, mixed in precisely the right proportions to suppress a wolf's manifestation without killing the human host. Gasps echoed through the hall. He also told me that this particular mixture is ancient. It was used centuries ago by packs who feared their omegas might be carriers of powerful bloodlines. Aldrich's gaze swept the high table. Bloodlines that could threaten existing power structures. Alpha Calder had gone pale. Your Majesty, I assure you, I have no knowledge of— Then who did? Aldrich's voice cracked like a whip. Someone has been administering illegal suppression drugs to my mate for over a decade. Someone in this pack made that decision. And I want to know who and why. Now. The silence stretched painfully. Then, to everyone's shock, Beta Garrick stood. It was me, Your Majesty. Garrick. No. Calder started. But the Beta shook his head. I won't lie to the Alpha King. Garrick's weathered face was resigned. It was my decision, made with Alpha Calder's reluctant agreement. We did it to protect the pack. Protect the pack from an Omega child? Aldrich's disbelief was evident, from what she could become. Garrick looked at Vera, and for the first time she saw something like regret in his eyes. Your mother, Lissa. She wasn't just an Omega, Your Majesty. She was the last known descendant of the Ashcote line. The name meant nothing to Vera, but Aldrich went very still beside her. The Ashcote line died out 200 years ago, he said quietly. We thought so too. Until Lissa appeared in our territory, pregnant and alone, begging for sanctuary. Garrick's voice grew heavy. She made Alpha Calder promise to protect her daughter, to keep her hidden. She said that if certain packs discovered an Ashcote heir existed, they would kill the child to prevent the old prophecies from manifesting. What prophecies? Vera found her voice, though it shook. Garrick turned to her fully. The Ashcotes were known as the Moonsingers, Omegas who could command other wolves through their voice alone. The last Moonsinger nearly overthrew the entire pack hierarchy 3 centuries ago. She convinced Alphas to abdicate, Betas to refuse orders, entire packs to abandon their territories. It took a coalition of 7 Alphas to kill her, and even then she slaughtered dozens before she fell. The Great Hall erupted in shocked murmurs. Your mother made us swear to suppress your wolf until you were old enough to control such power, if you inherited it at all? Garrick continued. She died before she could tell us when it would be safe to stop. So we kept going. Alpha Calder wanted to stop when you turned 18, but I convinced him to continue. I thought we were protecting you. Protecting all of us. Vera's mind reeled. Everything she'd believed about herself, about her mother, about her place in the world, all of it was a lie built on fear. So you imprisoned her, Aldrich said, his voice cold as winter. You stole her wolf, her dignity, her chance at a normal life, all to protect yourselves from a power she might not even have inherited. Yes, Garrick said simply, and I'll accept whatever punishment you deem fit, Your Majesty. Aldrich stood, and the entire hall seemed to hold its breath, but instead of pronouncing judgment, he turned to Vera. This is your story, he said quietly, meant only for her. Your pain. Your stolen years. What happens next should be your decision. Every eye in the great hall fixed on her. Vera, who'd spent her entire life trying to be invisible, who'd learned to swallow every hurt and accept every humiliation, now held the power to destroy the man who'd orchestrated it all. She stood slowly, her legs somehow steady despite the trembling in her hands. I need to know, she said, her voice carrying clearly in the silent hall. Did my mother really want this? Or did you convince a desperate dying woman that her daughter was a monster waiting to happen? Garrick flinched. She wanted you safe? That's not what I asked. Vera stepped forward, and something in her voice made the beta step back involuntarily. Did she want me drugged and isolated and made to believe I was worthless? Or did she want me protected until I was strong enough to choose my own path? I I don't know, Garrick admitted quietly. I thought they were the same thing. They're not. Vera looked at Alpha Calder, at Orin, at all the wolves who'd watched her suffer and done nothing. You didn't protect me. You caged me. There's a difference. She turned to Aldrich. I want to leave. Tonight. Not at dawn. Now. Then we leave now. He offered his arm, and she took it, feeling the bond between them pulse with approval and pride. As they moved toward the door, Vera stopped, turned back, and for the first time in her life, she let her voice carry the full weight of emotion she'd always suppressed. I forgive you. The words rang through the hall, and something strange happened. Every wolf present felt it. A pull, a command woven into her voice that they couldn't resist. Not forceful, but undeniable. The voice of something ancient and powerful, finally waking after years of forced sleep. But I will never forget, Vera continued, and her voice was music and thunder, mercy and judgment. And neither will you. They left Thornridge that night under a full moon, and Vera never looked back. The King's convoy moved through the night like a river of shadows, 50 wolves in perfect formation surrounding the royal carriage where Vera sat beside Aldrich. She'd never ridden in a carriage before, had never even left Thornridge territory in her entire life. Now the world opened before her like a book she'd never been allowed to read. Are you cold? Aldrich asked, noticing her slight shiver. Before she could answer, he'd draped his heavy cloak around her shoulders. It smelled like pine and leather and something uniquely him that made her wolf purr contentedly. I'm fine. Just overwhelmed. Vera pulled the cloak tighter. Everything's changing so fast. Too fast? His amber eyes studied her face carefully. We can slow down if you need. No. She surprised herself with the firmness of her response. If we slow down, I might start doubting this is real. That you're real. I'm real. He took her hand, threading their fingers together. Through the mate bond, she felt his certainty, his protectiveness, and underneath it all, an awe that matched her own. And so is this. They rode in comfortable silence for a while, the rhythmic sound of hoofbeats and wagon wheels creating a strange lullaby. Vera found herself studying Aldrich in the lamplight. The strong line of his jaw, the way his auburn hair fell across his forehead, the scars that marked him as a warrior who'd fought for everything he had. Can I ask you something? She ventured finally. Anything. Why aren't you mated already? You're the Alpha King. Surely you've had offers. A wry smile tugged at his lips. Hundreds. But none of them were right. My advisors thought I was being foolishly romantic, waiting for a fated mate that might never appear. He turned to look at her fully. But I knew. Something in me knew that when I found her, everything would make sense. And does it? Vera asked quietly. Make sense, I mean. That your mate is an omega from a minor pack with a suppressed wolf? You're not weak or broken. The words came out sharp, almost angry, though she knew the anger wasn't directed at her. Say it. Tell me you understand that. Vera, say it. She took a shaky breath. I understand. Again, like you believe it. This time, when she spoke, her voice was stronger. I'm not weak. I'm not broken. Good. He lifted their joined hands and pressed a kiss to her knuckles. Now keep saying it until it becomes truth instead of hope. Dawn broke as they crossed into Nightveen territory, and Vera gasped at her first glimpse of the King's lands. Where Thornridge had been dense forest and rolling hills, Nightveen was mountains and waterfalls, ancient trees that stretched toward the sky, and in the distance, a castle carved directly into the mountainside itself. "Welcome home," Aldrich said softly. Home. The word felt foreign and perfect all at once. The castle was even more impressive up close. Obsidian spires reaching toward the clouds, windows that caught the morning light and threw it back in rainbow prisms, gardens that bloomed despite the mountain altitude. Wolves in the distinctive silver and black of Night Vane's colors moved with purpose through the courtyards, pausing to bow as the king's carriage passed. But it was the people gathering at the main entrance that made Vera's breath catch. Dozens of them, all clearly high-ranking based on their dress and bearing, assembled to welcome their king home and to see his new mate. "I can't do this," Vera whispered, panic rising in her chest. "I don't know how to be a queen." "You don't have to know, not yet." Aldrich squeezed her hand. "Today, you just have to be yourself. Let them see who you are, not what you were forced to become." The carriage stopped. A footman opened the door. Aldrich stepped out first, then turned to offer his hand. Vera took it, emerging into the morning sunlight to face dozens of staring eyes. "My king!" A woman pushed through the crowd, elderly, with silver hair and eyes that sparkled with intelligence. "Thank the goddess you're home safe, and you've brought—" "Oh." She stopped short, her gaze fixing on Vera with an intensity that should have been frightening, but somehow wasn't. "Elder Maris," Aldrich greeted her warmly. "Allow me to present Vera Ashcote, my fated mate." The courtyard erupted in shocked murmurs, but Elder Maris's reaction was different. Her eyes widened, then filled with tears. "Ashcote," she breathed. "The moon goddess be praised. I thought the line was extinct." "You know of the Ashcotes?" Aldrich asked sharply. "Know of them?" "I studied under one, before the purge." Maris moved closer, her ancient hands reaching for Vera's face. "May I, child?" Vera nodded, and the elder's weathered fingers traced her cheekbones. Her jawline came to rest against her temples. "Yes," Maris whispered. "Yes, the gift is there. Sleeping, but not dead." "How long have you been suppressed?" 15 years, Vera admitted. "Maybe longer. I don't remember clearly." 15 years. Maris's expression darkened. "The damage could be severe. We'll need to cleanse your system carefully, or the release could overwhelm you." "How long will that take?" Aldrich demanded. "Weeks. Maybe months." Maris finally stepped back, but her eyes remained on Vera. "The Moonsinger gift is powerful, Your Majesty. If she releases it all at once, she could accidentally compel every wolf in the castle. We need to teach her control before we free her wolf completely." "Then we start today," Vera said firmly, surprising everyone, including herself. "I've wasted enough of my life. I won't waste another day." Elder Maris smiled. "Your mother's daughter indeed." "Very well. We'll begin this afternoon, after you've rested from your journey." The rest of the morning passed in a blur. Vera was shown to chambers that were larger than the entire kitchen wing in Thornridge, rooms with views of waterfalls, furniture carved by master craftsmen, closets filled with clothes in her size that Aldrich had apparently ordered made the moment he'd confirmed the mate bond. "I took a guess on your measurements," he admitted, looking almost sheepish. "If anything doesn't fit—" "It's too much," Vera interrupted, but there was no heat in her words. "Just wonder. I don't know what to do with all this. You live in it. You enjoy it. You get used to the fact that you deserve beautiful things." He caught her chin gently, tilting her face up to meet his eyes. "Can you try to believe that? That you deserve this?" "I can try," she whispered. "Good enough for now." He pressed a kiss to her forehead, chaste, respectful, but loaded with promise. "Rest. I have to address the council about our mating, but I'll come find you for dinner." After he left, Vera stood in the center of her new chambers, slowly turning to take it all in. Sunlight streamed through crystal windows. Soft rugs cushioned her feet. Books lined one wall. Real books. More than she'd ever seen in one place. And in the mirror across the room, a stranger stared back at her. A woman in fine clothes with braided hair and clear eyes. A woman who didn't look weak or worthless at all. "I'm not weak," she told her reflection. "I'm not broken." This time, she almost believed it. The council chamber of Night Vane was circular, with 7 high-backed chairs arranged in a semicircle facing a raised dais where the king sat. Vera stood beside Aldrich's throne, acutely aware of the 6 pairs of eyes studying her with varying degrees of curiosity, skepticism, and outright hostility. "This is unprecedented," Councillor Wren spoke first, his gray beard quivering with indignation. He was the eldest, a wolf who'd served under Aldrich's father and clearly resented change. A king choosing an Omega as his queen? It undermines the very foundation of our hierarchy. "The mate bond is recognized by the moon goddess herself," Aldrich replied, his voice dangerously calm. "Are you suggesting the goddess makes mistakes, Counselor?" "I'm suggesting," Wren pressed forward despite the warning in Aldrich's tone, "that perhaps this girl has used the Moonsinger gift to compel your Majesty's affection. The Ashcotes were known for such manipulation." Vera felt the accusation like a physical blow. Before she could respond, Aldrich's hand found hers, squeezing gently. "Let me," he murmured through their bond, then addressed the council with cold fury. "My mate has been suppressed for 15 years. She couldn't command a mouse right now, let alone the Alpha King. Your accusation is both insulting and ignorant." Nevertheless, Councillor Petra spoke up, a sharp-faced woman who controlled the Eastern Territories. "The other packs will see this as weakness. An Omega Queen? They'll think you've gone soft, lost your edge." "Then let them think so," Aldrich said. "And when they test me based on that assumption, they'll learn exactly how wrong they are." "You're willing to risk war over a girl?" Wren demanded. "I'm willing to defend my mate against any threat, including so-called allies who dare question her worth." Aldrich's eyes flashed dangerously. "Is that clear enough, Counselor?" The tension in the room was thick enough to cut. Vera could feel her wolf stirring, agitated by the hostility directed at her mate. For the first time since arriving in Night Vane, she felt something else, a pressure building in her throat. Words that wanted to be more than words. "If I may speak," she said quietly. "Vera, you don't have to—" Aldrich started, but she squeezed his hand. "I want to." She stepped forward, addressing the council directly. "You're right to question me. I would too, if our positions were reversed." Her voice was steady despite her racing heart. "I'm nobody. An Omega from a minor pack, raised in kitchens with no training in politics or leadership. By every traditional measure, I'm completely unqualified to be queen." Wren looked triumphant. "At least she's honest about her limitations." "I'm not finished." The words came out sharper than she intended, and something in her voice made Wren's mouth snap shut involuntarily. Vera blinked, surprised, but continued. "You judge me by what I lack, but what about what I bring? I know what it's like to be powerless, to be dismissed and overlooked. I understand the wolves you never see, the Omegas, the servants, the ones considered too insignificant to matter." Her voice grew stronger, and she could feel something building, the Moonsinger gift stirring after years of forced sleep. "How many of you can say the same?" The council shifted uncomfortably. "The strength of a pack isn't just its alphas and warriors," Vera continued, and now her words seemed to resonate in the air itself. "It's every wolf, from the strongest to the smallest. A kingdom built only on power is a kingdom waiting to fall." "Pretty words," Petra said, but her voice lacked conviction. "But words don't defend borders or maintain order." "No, they don't." Aldrich stood, moving to stand beside Vera. "But they inspire loyalty that fear never could. They build alliances that force never will. And if my mate's words can reach the wolves that traditional power structures ignore, then our kingdom will be stronger for it, not weaker. This is madness, Ren muttered. The other packs will... The other packs will adapt. A new voice entered the conversation, Counselor Drake, who'd remained silent until now. He was younger than the others, a warrior who'd earned his position through merit rather than inheritance. Because if they don't, they'll be left behind. The world is changing. Maybe it's time our leadership changed with it. Thank you, Drake, Aldrich acknowledged. Now, does anyone have legitimate concerns about my mate's safety or the security of the kingdom? Or are we simply clutching at tradition because change is uncomfortable? Silence fell. Then Counselor Issa, a middle-aged woman who governed the Northern Territories, spoke carefully. I have a question for the girl. For Queen Vera, Aldrich corrected sharply. For Queen Vera, Issa amended. What do you want? For yourself? For this kingdom? If you could change anything, what would it be? It was the first question anyone had asked about her desires rather than her deficiencies. Vera took a moment to consider her answer carefully. I want every wolf to know they have worth, regardless of their designation, she said finally. I want Omegas to have choices beyond servitude or breeding. I want strength to be measured by character, not just dominance. And I want a kingdom where the smallest voice can still be heard. Idealistic, Petra observed, but there was less hostility in her tone now. Perhaps impossible. Perhaps, Vera agreed. But isn't that what queens do? Work toward impossible things? For the first time, she saw something like respect flicker in Petra's eyes. The council session ended without a formal vote. They couldn't actually prevent the king from claiming his fated mate, and everyone knew it. But as they filed out, Vera noticed that some of the hostility had softened to cautious curiosity. Except for Ren, who paused at the door to deliver one final barb. The moon singers were destroyed for a reason, girl. I suggest you remember what happened to the last one who tried to change things. I suggest, Aldrich's voice cut through the chamber like ice, you remember what happens to those who threaten my mate. Even counselors can be replaced. Ren paled and left quickly. When they were finally alone, Vera slumped against the throne, exhaustion washing over her. That went well, she said sarcastically. That went better than expected, Aldrich corrected, pulling her into his arms. You stood before the kingdom's most powerful wolves and held your ground. You made them see you as more than just an Omega. That's a victory. It doesn't feel like victory. It feels like I barely survived. Victory often does. He tilted her chin up gently. But you did survive. And next time, it will be easier. And the time after that, easier still. Until one day, walking into that chamber won't make your heart race at all. Promise. I promise. He kissed her forehead. Now come. Elder Maris is waiting to begin your training. The sooner we free your wolf, the sooner you can show all of them exactly what a moonsinger queen can do. As they left the council chamber, Vera felt something shift inside her. Not her wolf, but something deeper. A determination that had nothing to do with proving others wrong and everything to do with proving herself right. She wasn't weak. She never had been. And soon, everyone would know it. Elder Maris's workshop occupied the highest tower of the castle, a circular room filled with herbs, crystals, and ancient texts that smelled of dust and magic. Vera stood in the center of a chalk circle, her palms sweating as the elderly woman circled her like a predator assessing prey. The suppression has damaged your connection to your wolf, Maris explained, pausing to examine a vial of dark liquid she'd drawn from Vera's blood. Not permanently, thank the goddess, but the pathways have atrophied, like a muscle that hasn't been used in years. Can it be fixed? Aldrich asked from where he leaned against the doorframe, refusing to leave despite Maris's suggestion that he might be a distraction. Fixed? Yes. Quickly? No. Maurice set the vial aside and turned to Vera. The Moonsinger gift manifests through voice, specifically, through the emotion behind your words. Right now, your gift is like a dam with cracks forming. Small amounts leak through, but the real power is still trapped. I felt it, Vera admitted, in the council chamber. When Ren tried to interrupt me, something in my voice made him stop. Exactly. Your gift is awakening naturally, but without control. Maris's expression grew grave. If we simply remove the suppression and let your power flood back all at once, you could accidentally compel everyone in the castle, including your mate. Aldrich stiffened. That won't happen. It could, Maris interrupted. The mate bond provides some protection, but not if the Moonsinger's power is completely unleashed and uncontrolled. I've seen it before, many years ago. A young Ashcote who suddenly manifested after trauma. She commanded her entire pack to walk into the ocean. By the time she realized what she'd done and released them, 17 wolves had drowned. The horror of that image made Vera's stomach turn. Then what do? We train. Every day. For as long as it takes. Maris pulled a small tuning fork from her pocket and struck it against the table. A pure note rang through the room. The Moonsinger gift works through resonance. Your voice carries your will, and if your will is strong enough, others cannot help but obey. But you must learn to control the volume, so to speak. To whisper when you could shout. For the next 3 hours, Maurice put Vera through exercises that seemed ridiculous at first, humming specific notes, reciting phrases with different emotional inflections, projecting her voice without raising its volume. But gradually, Vera began to feel it. The power coiled in her chest, waiting to be unleashed. Good, Maris said when Vera successfully made a candle flame dance without touching it, using only her voice. You're a natural, once you stop trying so hard. The gift flows best when you stop thinking and start feeling. How long did it take you to learn? Vera asked during a water break. Me? Child, I'm not a moonsinger. I'm just a scholar who studied them. Maris's expression grew distant. I told you I trained under an Ashcote. Her name was Seraphine, and she was the most remarkable woman I ever met. She could make grown alphas weep with a lullaby or send them into battle fury with a war chant. But more than that, she understood people. She knew what they needed to hear, how they needed to hear it. What happened to her? Vera asked, though she suspected she knew the answer. What happens to all powerful women who threaten the status quo? Maris's voice hardened. They killed her. 7 alphas, working together, because alone none of them could resist her voice. They called it justice. I call it murder born of fear. Aldrich straightened. Is that why the Ashcote line was hunted to extinction? Because they threatened alpha dominance? Partly, but also because they offered an alternative. Maris turned to look at him directly. Imagine a world where disputes were settled not by combat or dominance, but by a voice that could make all parties see reason, where Omegas weren't powerless, because one of their own could command kings to listen. The Moonsingers were revolution made manifest. Of course the old guard wanted them dead. But I don't want revolution, Vera protested. I just want justice, equality, for every wolf to have worth. Maris smiled sadly. Child, that is revolution. A knock at the door interrupted them. One of Aldrich's warriors poked his head in, looking apologetic. Forgive the intrusion, Your Majesty, but you asked to be notified if any unusual visitors arrived. Define unusual, Aldrich said warily. 3 Omegas from different packs, Your Majesty. They claim they heard about Queen Vera and wish to speak with her. They're waiting in the east courtyard. Vera and Aldrich exchanged glances. I'll come with you, he said immediately. The 3 Omegas waiting in the courtyard couldn't have been more different. One was barely more than a girl, perhaps 17, with nervous energy that had her constantly shifting her weight. The second was middle-aged, with scars on her arms that spoke of hard labor. The third was elderly, her back bent but her eyes sharp. They all dropped into respectful bows as Vera approached. "Please don't," Vera said quickly, uncomfortable with the gesture. "Stand up. What are your names?" "I'm Lyra," the young one said, "from the Riverdale pack." "Jana," the middle-aged woman added, "Stonecrest." "And I'm called Grandmother Nix," the elderly woman smiled. "Though I've been a member of so many packs I've lost count." "You traveled all this way just to see me?" Vera asked, bewildered. "We came because we heard impossible things," Jana explained. "That an Omega became queen. That the Alpha King chose a mate from the lowest rank. We had to know if it was true." "It's true," Aldrich confirmed, moving to stand beside Vera. "This is my mate and your queen." Lyra's eyes filled with tears. "Then it's possible. I thought everyone said Omegas could never be more than servants or breeders. But if you did it—" "I didn't do anything," Vera interrupted gently. "The mate bond isn't something you can earn or achieve. I just got lucky." "No," Grandmother Nix said firmly. "You survived. That's more than luck. That's strength." She stepped closer, her ancient eyes seeming to see straight through Vera. "And unless I'm mistaken, you carry the old blood, the Moonsinger gift." Gasps from Lyra and Jana. "How did you—" Vera started. "I'm old enough to remember the last Ashcote." Nix's smile was mysterious. "I met Seraphine once, before the purge. You have her eyes." "You knew her?" Maris had followed them down and now pushed forward excitedly. "I studied under her. Did you know she kept journals? I have 3 of them." As the 2 elderly women fell into rapid conversation about ancient moonsingers, Lyra approached Vera hesitantly. "Your Majesty," she whispered, "can I ask you something?" "Just Vera, please." "Vera, then." Lyra twisted her hands nervously. "In my pack, there's an Omega named Kessa. She's only 13, but they've already promised her to a beta twice her age. She doesn't want to go, but no one listens. Would you?" "Yes," Vera said immediately, before the girl could even finish. "Give me the details. I'll speak to your alpha." "You will?" Lyra's face lit up with hope. "Of course. That's what queens do, isn't it? Protect those who can't protect themselves." Vera looked at Jana and Nix. "All of you. If you know Omegas who need help, send them to me. Or come yourself if you need sanctuary." "You're offering refuge?" Jana asked carefully. "To any Omega who asks?" "I'm offering options," Vera corrected. "A place where designation doesn't determine destiny." Aldrich's pride flowed through the mate bond, warm and bright. Over the next hour, more Omegas appeared. Then more. Word had spread faster than Vera imagined possible. The Omega Queen was receiving visitors, listening to grievances, offering help. By sunset, there were 20 Omegas crowded into the courtyard, each with stories of mistreatment, abuse, or simple hopelessness. Vera listened to every single one. "This is how it starts," Elder Maris murmured to Aldrich as they watched Vera comfort a sobbing Omega who'd been separated from her children. Not with grand declarations or dramatic reveals, but with one person offering hope to those who've never had any. "She's going to change everything," Aldrich said quietly. "She already has," Maris replied. "The question is whether the old guard will let her." 3 weeks after Vera's arrival in Night Vane, the Council of 7 Alphas convened for their quarterly assembly. Traditionally held in neutral territory, this gathering brought together the most powerful wolves in the realm to discuss trade, borders, and mutual concerns. This year, they'd come to discuss the Omega Queen. Vera stood in the preparation chamber, staring at her reflection in the polished silver mirror. The gown she wore was midnight blue, embroidered with silver thread in patterns that resembled moonlight on water. Her hair was braided in the traditional style of Nightveen queens, adorned with crystals that caught the light. She looked like royalty. She felt like an imposter. "You're going to be fine," Aldrich said, appearing behind her. His hand settled on her shoulders, warm and grounding. "More than fine. You're going to show them exactly why I chose you." "You didn't choose me. The mate bond chose for us. The bond brought us together," he corrected gently. "But I chose to defend you, to elevate you, to stand beside you. And I'd make that choice 1,000 times over." Through the bond, she felt his absolute certainty. It helped, but not enough to stop her hands from shaking. "What if I freeze?" she whispered. "What if my gift fails me? Then you use your intelligence instead. Your compassion. Your stubborn refusal to accept injustice." He turned her to face him. "You don't need the Moonsinger gift to be remarkable, Vera. You already are." A knock at the door. "Your Majesties, they're ready for you." The Grand Assembly Hall was circular, with 7 thrones arranged in a ring, each occupied by an alpha. Aldrich took his seat at the highest point, and a smaller throne, hastily added for this occasion, sat beside his, for his Omega Queen. Vera felt every eye track her movement as she crossed the floor. Some gazes held curiosity, others hostility, a few calculating assessment. She kept her chin up, her stride steady, and took her seat with as much grace as she could muster. "Shall we begin?" Alpha Calder spoke first, and Vera's stomach clenched at seeing her former alpha. He'd been required to attend, despite the humiliation of losing his Omega to the king. "I move that we address the matter of unconventional mate choices and their impact on pack stability." "Unconventional," Aldrich repeated, his voice dangerously soft. "Interesting word choice, Calder. Care to elaborate?" "We all know what this is about," Alpha Theron of the Western Territories spoke bluntly. He was massive, scarred, and had a reputation for brutality. "You chose an Omega as queen. It sets a dangerous precedent. Omegas getting ideas above their station." "Ideas like having worth beyond breeding and serving?" Vera heard herself say. Every head turned toward her. "How terrible." Theron's eyes narrowed. "You have a sharp tongue for an Omega." "I have a voice, period. Whether I use it is my choice." Vera felt her gift stirring, drawn out by her rising anger, but she held it back carefully. Shouting would only prove their point. "And I'm curious. What exactly about my designation makes me unfit to be queen? My ability to empathize with those who suffer? My understanding of what it means to be powerless? Or is it simply that I make you uncomfortable because I don't fit your neat little hierarchy?" "The hierarchy exists for a reason," Alpha Soren of the Southern Territories interjected. He was older, diplomatic, less openly hostile. "It maintains order, prevents chaos. It maintains power for those who already have it," Vera countered, "and calls that order." "You see?" Calder gestured at Vera as if she'd just proved his point. "This is exactly what happens when Omegas are given too much voice. They question everything, destabilize everything." "Good," Aldrich interrupted coldly. "Let them question. Let them destabilize. Any system that can't withstand questions probably deserves to fall." "You're risking civil war over this girl." Theron slammed his fist on the armrest. "Packs are already choosing sides. The traditional against the progressive. If this continues..." "If this continues," Vera spoke, and this time she let just a hint of her gift color her words. Not compelling, but resonating. "Maybe we'll build something better than what we had. A realm where every wolf has value, not just the strongest." The room fell silent. Several alphas shifted uncomfortably, feeling the pull of her voice even as they tried to resist it. She's using the gift, Calder accused. Even now she's trying to manipulate. I'm stating my truth, Vera interrupted. Whether you choose to hear it or not is your decision. Truth. Alpha Moira, who'd been silent until now, leaned forward. She ruled the Eastern Territories and had a reputation for fairness. An interesting word. Let me speak a truth then. I've received 23 requests for asylum from Omegas in the past 3 weeks, all seeking refuge in Night Vein, all claiming mistreatment in their home packs. Her gaze swept the other alphas. We can call the Queen's influence destabilizing, or we can acknowledge that she's exposed problems that already existed. They're Omegas, Theron dismissed. They always complain. Is Kessa Riverdale just complaining? Vera's voice cut through his words. The 13-year-old being sold to a 50-year-old beta? Or what about Mira Stonecrest, who had her children taken because she dared to ask for better working conditions? Or Jana, who carries scars from years of abuse that her alpha ignored? She stood, and her gift rose with her, not forcing, but filling the room like a tide. You call my influence dangerous because Omegas are finally being heard, because they're finally standing up, because they're finally choosing freedom over silent suffering. Her voice rang through the hall, resonating in ways that made several alphas flinch. You're not afraid of me destabilizing the hierarchy. You're afraid because I'm proving it was never as stable as you pretended. Enough. Theron stood, his wolf visible in his eyes. I challenge this decision. The Omega should not sit on the council. Then challenge me. Aldrich's voice was pure alpha dominance. He stood, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop. Because my mate is not up for debate. She sits beside me because she's my equal. Anyone who disputes that disputes me. Theron hesitated. Going up against the Alpha King was suicide, and everyone knew it. I thought not. Aldrich's smile was sharp. Now, sit down and listen. Because my queen has more to say. Vera met his eyes, feeling his support flow through the bond, and made her choice. She'd held back her gift until now, afraid of proving Calder right. But some truths needed to be felt, not just heard. I'm going to speak now, she said quietly, and I'm going to use my gift. Not to compel you, but to help you feel what I feel. What every Omega you've dismissed has felt. If you truly believe the hierarchy is just, it won't sway you at all. She took a breath, centered herself the way Elder Maris had taught her, and let her gift fill her words. You fear change because you have something to lose. Her voice became music, resonating in the bones of every wolf present. Power, status, control. But while you've been protecting what you have, you've ignored what you've lost. The loyalty that comes from respect, not fear. The strength that comes from unity, not domination. The innovation that comes from listening to every voice, not just the loudest. Tears streamed down Alpha Moira's face. Even Theron looked shaken. I'm not asking you to give up your strength, Vera continued, her voice gentle now. I'm asking you to use it differently, to protect instead of dominate, to elevate instead of suppress, to build a realm where every wolf, Alpha to Omega, knows they have worth. She released the gift, letting the silence settle. When she finally looked around, she saw something that hadn't been there before. Consideration. Not agreement, not in all of them, but consideration. The council will take your words under advisement, Soren said finally, his voice rough. And we'll reconvene tomorrow to discuss specific reforms. It wasn't victory, but it was a beginning. As they left the hall, Aldrich pulled Vera close. That was extraordinary, he murmured against her hair. It was terrifying, she admitted. That too. He kissed her temple. But you did it. You made them listen. Some of them. Theron and Calder won't change. No, but Moira will. And Soren might. And that's enough to start shifting the balance. That night, as Vera lay in bed too keyed up to sleep, she felt her wolf stirring stronger than ever before. The suppression was almost completely broken now, and soon she'd be able to shift fully for the first time in her life. But more than that, she felt something else: purpose. She finally understood why the mate bond had brought her to Aldrich, why she'd survived everything Thornridge had done to her. She was meant to be a voice for the voiceless, and she was just getting started. 6 months later, Vera stood in what had become known as the Queen's Hall, a building she'd commissioned specifically for Omegas and lower-ranked wolves to bring grievances directly to the crown. It had been her first official project as queen, and seeing it completed and functioning filled her with quiet satisfaction. "Your Majesty, the afternoon petitioners are ready," announced Lyra, who now served as Vera's personal assistant. The young Omega who'd first sought help had flourished in Night Vane, training in both administration and self-defense. "Send them in," Vera replied, settling into her chair. Not a throne, she'd insisted on that. Something comfortable, approachable. The first petitioner was an elderly beta who'd been cheated by a merchant. The second was a young alpha with questions about trade agreements. The third was an omega seeking permission to train as a healer, something her home pack had forbidden. Vera listened to each one, providing guidance, making notes, connecting wolves with resources they needed. Some problems she could solve immediately. Others required coordination with the council or Aldrich's direct intervention. But every single wolf left, knowing they'd been heard. "You're smiling." Aldrich's voice made her look up. He stood in the doorway, still in training leathers from the morning session with his warriors. "Am I?" She touched her face, surprised. "I suppose I am. This feels right. Like I'm finally doing what I'm supposed to be doing." "You are." He crossed the room to kiss her forehead. "And you're brilliant at it." In the months since the council assembly, change had come slowly but steadily. Alpha Moira had implemented Omega protection laws in the Eastern Territories. Soren had created educational opportunities for lower-ranked wolves in the South. Even some of the more traditional alphas had begun cautiously reforming their practices, though more out of political pressure than genuine belief. Theron and Calder remained stubbornly opposed, but they were increasingly isolated voices. "The Omega Council meeting is in an hour," Lyra reminded Vera. This was another innovation, a body made up entirely of Omegas from different packs, who met monthly to discuss issues specific to their designation and proposed solutions. "Already?" Vera glanced at the sun's position. "Time flies when you're dismantling centuries of oppression, I suppose." Aldrich laughed. "Is that what you're doing?" "One petition at a time," she replied with a smile. That evening, Vera stood on the balcony of their private chambers, watching the sun set over the mountains. Aldrich joined her, wrapping his arms around her waist from behind. "I got a message from Elder Maris today," she said quietly. "She thinks I'm ready." "Ready for what?" "To fully shift for the first time." Vera turned in his arms to face him. "All traces of the suppression are gone. My wolf is completely awake now. We could do it tonight." She saw excitement flash in his eyes, followed immediately by concern. "Are you ready?" "Terrified," she admitted, "but also excited. I want to know what it feels like to run free, to be complete." "Then tonight," he decided. "Just us. No ceremony, no witnesses. Just you and your wolf. Finally whole." They went to the forest clearing behind the castle as the full moon rose. Vera stood in its light, feeling the pull of her wolf stronger than ever before. "You've got this," Aldrich encouraged, having already shifted to his massive black wolf form. "Just let go." Vera closed her eyes and stopped fighting. For the first time in her life, she surrendered completely to her wolf. The shift was nothing like the agonizing partial transformation she'd experienced before. This was fluid, natural, like slipping into water. Bones reformed without pain. Fur erupted in a cascade of silver white. Her senses exploded into new dimensions of awareness. When she opened her eyes, the world was transformed. Colors she'd never seen, scents she couldn't name, sounds that painted pictures in her mind. And when she looked down at her paws, massive, powerful, completely unlike the weak, malformed wolf she'd been told she'd become, she wanted to cry. Beautiful. Aldrich's voice echoed in her mind through the mate bond. You're absolutely beautiful. Her wolf was large for a female, nearly Aldrich's size. Her fur was pure silver white, seeming to glow in the moonlight. But most striking were her eyes. They'd turned a luminous blue, bright as stars. Run with me, Aldrich invited. They ran through the forest, and for the first time in her life, Vera experienced true freedom. The joy of movement, of power, of being exactly what she was meant to be. She was fast, faster than Aldrich expected, making him work to keep up. She was strong, leaping over fallen logs that should have been obstacles. She was whole. They ran until dawn, and when they finally shifted back to human form, breathless and laughing, Vera felt like a different person. Thank you, she whispered to Aldrich. For what? For seeing me when no one else did. For believing I was worth saving. You saved yourself, he corrected. I just had the privilege of watching you do it. A year after Vera's arrival in Night Vane, the spring gathering looked very different than before. The Great Hall still had tables arranged by designation, but now they were mixed. Alphas sat beside Omegas. Betas conversed with Gammas. The rigid hierarchy hadn't disappeared entirely. Change took time, but the walls were crumbling. Vera moved through the crowd, stopping to speak with various wolves. She'd learned to navigate these events, to use her gift subtly to ease tensions and build bridges. She was no longer the scared Omega hiding in corners. She was queen, and she wore the title with growing confidence. Your Majesty. A young Omega approached nervously, barely 16, from a pack in the far north. I wanted to thank you. Because of the new laws, my alpha is letting me train as a scout. I never thought. Omegas don't usually. They do now, Vera said warmly. And you'll be brilliant at it. Watching from the dais, Aldrich felt pride surge through their bond. His mate had transformed not just herself, but their entire realm. The Omega Queen, who everyone said would weaken the kingdom, had instead made it stronger, more united, more just. Senna approached Vera tentatively, the same Senna who'd tormented her in Thornridge. She'd sought asylum in Night Vane 3 months ago, fleeing an arranged mating. Your Majesty, Senna kept her eyes down. I wanted to apologize again, for everything I did. Senna, Vera interrupted gently. You've apologized. I've forgiven you. Now you need to forgive yourself and move forward. How? Senna's voice cracked. How did you do it? Go from where you were to this? Vera considered the question carefully. I stopped believing what they told me I was. Started listening to what I knew I could be. She smiled. And I found people who believed in me. You have that now too. Use it. As the evening progressed, Vera found herself standing by the window where this had all begun, that kitchen window where she'd first seen Aldrich and felt the mate bond snap into place. Thinking about old times? Aldrich appeared beside her. Thinking about how much has changed. She leaned into his warmth. A year ago, I was invisible. Now I can't go anywhere without someone needing something from me. Too much pressure? No. She looked up at him. It's purpose. I finally understand why I survived everything they did to me. I was meant to use that pain to help others. The Moonsinger Queen? Aldrich murmured. Did you ever imagine this would be your life? Never. She laughed softly. I couldn't have dreamed this, but I'm glad I'm living it. Through the window, she could see other Omegas in the courtyard, some newly arrived, seeking sanctuary. Some who'd been there for months, flourishing in their new freedom. Each one a small victory against the old ways. They left me out on purpose, Vera said quietly, remembering that first terrible night. And now? Now I sit beside the king. Now my voice matters. Now I'm changing the world. She turned to face him fully. Now I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Aldrich pulled her close and she felt his love wash through their bond. Steady, unwavering, absolute. The Omega who'd been rejected had become the queen who would transform a realm. The voiceless had found her voice, and the wolf they tried to suppress had become unstoppable.